Hello, beautiful souls. This is Quinn Curtis, and you are listening and watching, if you're seeing this on video, the Joyful Living Podcast. And today we have an epically special guest that I am so excited to share with you. This is my dear friend and just a total rock star, Casey VanZandt. And let me tell you a little bit about Casey before I officially bring her on the show, because she is amazing. So Casey is a speaker, a business consultant, and a yoga teacher. And she is uber committed to helping successful entrepreneurs to scale their businesses, banish burnout, and balance their work and life. She's the queen of work-life balance and loves introducing balance to successful entrepreneurs' lives. Once you go balance, you never go back. A little beat on Casey's background is she climbed the corporate ladder for 13 years and was completely obsessed and addicted to her career. She's an ex-corporate executive and recovering workaholic turned balanced entrepreneur. She believes that when you experience new success, although no easy task, that is just one step of many and isn't even always the hardest step. She helps successful entrepreneurs maintain their success and scale their businesses for the long haul so they still like their business. How many of you can relate with that? And want to show up for it for the next 3, 5, 10, or 20 years or more from now. Her spirit animal is the sand dollar, true story, and she has a collection of hundreds she's found on her afternoon seashell adventures. She loves yoga pants, chapsticks, has zero time for small talk, and prefers deep combos with her soul sisters, and is hands down obsessed with mushroom coffee and lion's mane. Casey the Bomb, welcome to Joyful Living. I'm so excited to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I'm so excited to be here as well.
Oh, this is so much goodness. I've been waiting to have you on the show for how long? We've been talking about this for a while, and now it's finally here, and it's going to be so good. So good.
So good. So good. I think it was like almost a year we've been kind of talking about it and just never made it happen. So voila.
True. The stars aligned, and now it's time. So let's dive in. This is going to be such a great conversation. We have some, I always ask with my guests, any of the guests I have on, we set a very clear intention together of what we're really hoping for from the show. And with this show, there's some really juicy, high intentions. So I really hope that everybody listening, that you'll really just, connect into your heart while you're listening to this episode. And also, you'll help find this gear of badassery in your system around what you were born to do and how that operates in your business, because I really don't know of anybody better to have this kind of conversation with than Casey about really finding more of this space of living while you're growing your business and being able to just take it to the next level and crush it while still having and even improving your life that you love and making it really just delicious. So it's going to be a great conversation today. So Casey, everybody that I bring on the show, I love asking them this first question. This is standard, and then everything else is, as it flows. But the question is, what does joyful living look and feel like to you? What we're really looking for is, what does Casey VanZandt's flavor of joyful living look like? And the reason why we ask this is because on this show, we have a major premise that joyful living is not a one-stop shop. It's not a one-size-fits-all kind of a situation like a lot of us have lived believing that happiness was. And so part of our journey in really living a joyful life is about discovering, well, what's joy for us? So tell us a little bit, Casey, about what is joyful living for you?
Ooh, we're already getting into the juicy. Joyful living for me, let's see. I'd say I am the most joyful when I am completely in sync with my intuition and I am vibing on all things intuition. So even if logically in my head something does not make any sense at all, but my intuition is kind of giving me a nudge, whether I need to go through something further or pull back a little bit. But I'm most joyful when I am super in tune with my intuition and I'm letting the belly lead over the mind. And it can get especially interesting when it's stuff where your logical mind is like, no, don't you dare do this. Like, you'll lose everything. Or, those big fear moments where your logical mind will step in. So I would say there's a balance between logical and intuition. But for me, my intuition is a little bit ranked heavier. So it's a good balance between the two. That would be what my most, when I'm vibing in the most joyful way, it's there. When I only use my head, it's just head. So
Yeah.
there's nothing to feel. So it just makes sense logically, but there's no feeling in any of the work that you're doing. So it can become very boring and headstrong. But if you can bring in, well, what I'm not saying, I'm not preaching already, but like when I bring in, not we, when I bring in the intuition, I can actually enjoy what it is I'm doing and really tap into joyfulness. But if it's up here, there's not much joy because it's just head.
Mm.
Yeah.
Man, I'm like loving that so much. It's such a clear and powerful distinction, which honestly is such a perfect lead into our conversation, which I actually love. I love this so much. So I was wondering if before we really dive into some of the juiciness that I know that you've been preparing and that just is your jam, I was wondering if you would mind sharing a little bit about that swap that you had, a little bit of your story from going from corporate to where you are now, just like sharing a little bit of a snapshot of what that journey was like and kind of any struggles that you went through into what you're really enjoying now.
Sure. Okay. Let's see if I can give you the Cliff Note version.
Yeah.
I'm not used to this video. I'm very animated, but I'm not used to the video. So when I just saw myself do this, I'm like, let's dial that back a bit. Anyways, but like if it wasn't a video, I can be all rolling around over here. Anyways, okay. So I lived two very different ways. When I was in corporate America, I was an A-type, I was an alpha, I was, rocking boardrooms and really, really just all up here. And I was quite addicted to success. So it was very similar to when people are looking for something externally for happiness. For me, I was looking to grow that corporate ladder, and that for me equaled success. So raises, promotions, money, all of that stuff was really, really important to me, and it totally was tied into my identity. And I was a complete workaholic, but here's the thing, like I loved it. Like I'm sure most addicts probably love what it is that makes them vibe and zing. So for me, acknowledgement, praise, raises, promotions, press releases, that kind of stuff really vibrated me in a way that just hooked me in fully. And so as an aftermath of all of this, imagine being in sixth gear for years and never even downshifting to fifth or fourth gear. Eventually your body's going to basically be like, no more, right?
Yeah.
So I completely ran through my adrenals. They were completely shot. And then I ended up with a terrible stress rash from my head to my toes. It was disgustingly gnarly. And, I can specifically remember I was getting ready to do a speaking engagement at a national conference, probably 300 or so people in Orange County. And my guardian angels told me to pack a long sleeve dress because you would not pack that for OC. And I couldn't take the stage without this dress because not for superficial reasons. I just looked ill. I was very, very ill. My adrenals were done. This was my body's way of just being like, stop, right? And even the doctor, I had been to the doctor for the rash probably a week or so before, and he was like, you're going to have to slow it down. And I'm like, whatever, So after when I'm looking in the mirror and just seeing it come up to the face, I was like, this is not good. So I took the stage, and then at that point, I decided to leave corporate America. And in that process, it actually kind of jump-started my spiritual journey because I had never really reflected. I never meditated. I was never quiet. I was always talking, right? So I went through about 6 weeks of really getting to know myself. And the ironic thing was this rash was a blessing because it would fire from internal and external heat. So when I would go to tell the story, the rash would grow. Which is funny now, not funny then. So it forced me to be quiet. And all I wanted to do was tell the story, like how dare this happen to me and that kind of a thing. Wow. Well, through the process, I realized it was all me because the company I was working for was super promoting take family vacations. They were big into this. It was just me. Wow. So in this process, I realized it was me. And so I went back for a couple of years, I think maybe 3 years. And I went back differently. I had a hobby. I had a meditation practice. I wanted to protect my adrenals. I wanted to protect my space, like what you can't see behind the skin. Like it was really important to me that I protected this. So when I went back with the mindset of, okay, I'll go back. I just won't be the rock star. Can you be okay with not being the rock star? And I was like, well, I got to go back to work, So, but I went back thinking I wasn't going to get anything because I was going to have this new life. Well, turns out everything kept happening. Kept getting promotions, kept getting raises, but they were coming from a different integrity standpoint, meaning not integrity, but I mean integrity to your body. Like I always work in integrity. Let's be clear there, very clear in there. But I mean integrity to what you can't see. So what I was doing was abusing my adrenals, abusing the body in not a healthy way. So that's what I mean when I was going back with integrity to my body. And so shortly after I kept getting a couple more promotions and things, I was like, why was I doing it the hard way for so long? This makes no sense. Surely I'm not the only person. I've got to share this message. I've got to tell other executives that are completely making it way harder than it needs to be. There is a way that you can bring you into this equation, balance your work and your life, and still be a complete bad, you know, like you can be a total badass, right? So that's where it kind of started to brew. And then my original plan was I was going to step out and be a yoga teacher and share this message to people that were finding yoga, that were, you know, big workers and things like that, executives. And I was going to share this whole balance message on the mat. And then basically what ended up happening was I was basically going to throw away all of my business experience. Why? Right? So, and I think it, you know, partially it just was I was going to do something completely different. So fast forward 5 to 6 years later, now I'm doing both. I teach a little bit of yoga and I also speak, go into companies and also at trade shows and conferences and speak about this. And then I'm helping businesses now with a foundation of work-life balance grow and scale, but keeping the business happy, keeping the CEO happy, the owner, and then keeping the employees happy so that everybody can operate in their genius zone. Everybody can feel a little bit happier about going to work for a bigger cause. And the company makes more money, the employees make more money, and that's what I'm doing. So I'm mixing it all up, and I've been running a boutique consulting business for about 5.5 years. So
amazing. I love your story. It's so inspiring. And by the way, for those of you listening, when Casey's talking about scaling businesses, she's not talking about or growing. She's not talking about like growing it by 1,000. She's talking about growing it by millions. Like this girl comes in to businesses that are already at a good level of success, and she drastically multiplies their success by employing these strategies. So she knows legit what she's talking about, which I love about you. And I love that it comes from this space of work-life balance. Magic.
Yeah. And because I'm boutique, I'm not trying to take on 100 accounts. So I want, you know, a handful of really great accounts that we work very closely together in that, and everybody kind of wants this message. So that's the nice part about the work that I'm doing. And then I work with 2 different groups. So my corporate accounts usually have about like 100 or so employees, and they're in growth mode. So one of my accounts got listed on the Inc. 500 list for number 129 fastest growing privately owned companies for Inc. 500. So that was like a huge win for them. You know, really exciting stuff like that. So that's like kind of the corporate piece. And then I'm also helping entrepreneurs that maybe they've never worked in a corporate environment, or they're not used to having employees. So I'll help them transition and onboard so that process is smooth from day one. I see a lot of entrepreneurs struggling bringing in their first couple of employees because they're just not used to leading big groups. They're used to working with freelancers that are not very part-time, but they're not part of your culture. They're just taking tasks and doing them. So when you bring them into your culture, helping them with that process is been really fun. So
yeah, it's just the best. So recently, Casey is also one of my very dearest friends in the whole wide world. And so recently we were in California, not far from your cute little bungalow, on the beach, and you were having a come to Jesus with me about, Quinn, do you recognize how much money that you are pouring down the drain every single month that you don't have the support that you need? Oh, Quinn, let me do the math and tell you what that number is. And it was life-changing. Like, you changed my life in that moment. And I've had lots of support over the years. And as far as I've had lots of VAs, I've hired out lots of stuff like you're talking about, like lots of freelancers. I've totally worked with that. Then in corporate environments, I've had teams that I've been directing, and no problem. But for some reason, there was a major block around bringing somebody into my business that closely. And I would imagine this is pretty common with what you see, or what are some of those common blocks that you are seeing with really taking things to the next level?
Yeah, I think, your fear or ego, whatever you want to use interchangeably there, that instantly steps in anytime you're going to make any kind of drastic change.
Mm.
So bringing on someone, what normally happens in the mind is I'm going to bring on a full-time person. Okay, that's going to cost me X $5,000 a month. Oh my gosh, how am I going to pay them for an entire year? What if the business goes down? They're going to have a family to support. They've quit their job. They've moved. And you just go down that hamster wheel, And so the hamster wheel just keeps spinning and spinning and spinning. So if you have zero mindfulness, you're going to just spin and nothing will ever happen because the spinning will scare the crap out of you and you're just stuck, right?
Ah.
But if you are mindful and you're practicing mindfulness in some capacity, usually a little bit more spiritual, you're going to be a little bit aware, but that does not alleviate the fear. Right. So I like to break down overwhelm and simplify processes to say, okay, here's the reality. Anybody you bring on is on a trial for 90 days anyway. You're going to likely know in the first 2 days if this person's going to work, meaning are they a good fit for your company? Okay. So rather than thinking about, them being out on the street homeless because you can't pay them because your business fails, right? Like that's the worst case it goes, right? Rather than going there, let's say, okay, I can afford to pay them for the first 90 days. That's the minimal commitment anyway, right? That's what's going to happen. Let's simplify that. Let's really make sure that we onboard them properly. I do my prep work to make sure that they're ready. I'm organized. I'm doing a good job of really explaining my culture, really, really working with them hands-on, right? But then not just completely going offline for a week with them because then your work's not getting done. Right. So really setting up that onboarding to where it's almost like you're doing two things at once. So you sit down with them, you give them kind of an orientation for for an hour, right? Get them all going good. And then you're just like, okay, here's
by the way.
Yeah.
And like a day, an hour. Because that's what we assume. Oh, this will take me days,
Yes, exactly. And it can. If you don't know what you're doing, you will go offline for a week and you're going to feel really good about it. But the reality is after a week, that person isn't completely ready to take the reins and you're a week offline and now you're overwhelmed and now you're feeling like it's not working. Fair? You're like, what did I do? I'm so behind and now I'm having to give all this work to all of this effort and energy to this person. On the flip side, and this is kind of how you can break it down, is that like on the flip side, you are looking at it, okay, the first hour, I'm going to give them a great orientation. I'm going to give them an agenda. Here's kind of what today is going to look like. Okay, here's our task number 1 after the orientation. You explain it to them, you work, nothing feels rushed, right? And then rather than them just learning as you're telling them, they have a task within that, whatever you've taught them. And you say, I'm going to go over here. I'm going to be over here for about 30 minutes working on my stuff. I'm going to come touch base then, right? Wow. So now you're stepping away. And although you're not going to be able to get that much done in 30 minutes, but you're still able to get your stuff done. So now guess what? What you want is 2 things happening at once. And if everything's going well, when you come back over here to check, you're not micromanaging. You're just checking to make sure how you explained it. Maybe there were some holes in how you communicated it, right? And that's not the person's fault. That's something that you're not communicating properly, or it's not being heard correctly. So now you have to take another stab at it. So I really help people break down that. But back to your original question, got a little off track, sorry. But everybody feels that way. So even some of my big corporate clients that are multimillionaires, close to being billionaires, there's still a fear element anytime you're going to bring on a whole department or an employee. So I think that's really important to know is that we get scared because we're smaller entrepreneurs. We're like, this is such a big deal for us. When am I going to feel like this isn't a big deal? It's never not going to feel like a big deal. So becoming familiar with like that uncomfort or discomfort, like knowing that that's going to be there and how do you work through that discomfort and break through? Because even if you are a multimillionaire, you're still like, oh, do I really want to do this? How am I going to make it happen? Because you're always scaling. If you're a successful business owner, you're always scaling. So.
Man, there's so many good places that I want to go with this. But the first of like kind of just taking it back to a more even basic level is I know a lot, or I don't know, maybe that was the wrong kind of language, but I know a lot of our listeners are really, really small business and they are women in business. So many of them. And so even the idea of thinking of getting to this point is terrifying of like, oh, bringing on staff at all. So I wondered if you could speak to, because I know it's something you have a lot of passion for, there's so many women that don't even have a perception of what playing big could look like. And they're so scared it's going to cost them significantly to do so. So they just keep playing small in a way, right? Have you seen that as well, or what?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I was curious if you had any insights as far as like, how do you get out of that game and start really like moving forward? Because I think a lot of people think it's going to be, you know, like what you described with corporate, right? Where it's like, it's going to be full on burnout, working all the time if my business is successful. And so they instead play it as a hobby, right? So any ideas, or I know I'm kind of taking you off topic, but I just feel like I'd like to catch that group up to this conversation, you know?
Absolutely. So if you're treating it like a hobby, it is a hobby. So whether it's a small business and it's just you right now, and that's all it can financially afford, there's a point in every business where that's all it can financially afford, and you are the employee to the business, right?
Yeah.
But what I would say is when you're there, look at how you're treating this business. So are you showing up for it Monday to Friday? And maybe you can't give it 8 hours a day because you've got a family and you've got other things going on, but what are you giving it, right? And just look at it, just black and white. Am I treating this like a hobby, or am I treating this like an empire? And really decide, right, like hobby or empire. And if you're somewhere in the middle and you want to treat it like an empire, and it truly is just you, show of one right now, where can you show up a little bit more in it? And that doesn't mean you burn yourself out. It doesn't mean you work 7 days a week. It doesn't mean you work 15-hour days. You're just looking at it in an honest way. Am I treating this as a hobby, or am I treating this as an empire? And then once you kind of decide where you're at in this grid, maybe you want to up it, or maybe you need to downplay it. But wherever you're at, like, decide, this is my empire and this is going to work. And that's kind of like when people tell you to step fully in, like visualize a circle and like see, is my toe in? Is my heel in? Like, I need to step in fully and make this an empire, right? And then at that point, you're like, okay, you're mentally there. But the second you go mentally there and you're feeling really good and really charged, you're giving yourself like the big atta girl conversation, right? The next morning, fear is going to slap you in the face and say, it can't happen. It's just going to keep, right? Do you ever notice that, where you wake up the next morning and you're like, what the heck happened to my vibe? My mojo's gone.
Yeah.
And you don't want to get up. You get up and you show up for this empire, because you're starting to get familiar with what your mind's going to do. So mindset is a difference between the best and the rest. Mindset is everything. So you want to prepare for what your mind's going to do. Your mind's going to try everything to take you out of the game. It's going to tell you it's not good enough. You're not good enough. Business isn't good enough. How dare you think you could blah, 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 blah. All this noise, the back to that hamster wheel. You still show up. You still show up. You sit at your desk and you do whatever you're committed to do in that work process. And it's like anything. If you show up for it every day consistently, and I say every day, I don't mean 7 days a week and I don't mean all day, but you show up for it, even if you don't feel like showing up for it, and watch how things just start to shift and move, right? But if you half whatever and just don't do it, then it's always going to be a hobby. And then when you're showing up for it every day, maybe you're not in a position to bring in someone full time, but you could maybe bring in a virtual assistant for 2 hours a week that's helping you take some of this work that's costing your business way more money than it needs to be. Yeah. So if you look at your hourly rate, right, anything that could be done at a minimum wage rate or a little bit less, right, outsourcing that to some hired help, not on your payroll, but just, hey, I'm going to give you 3 hours a week or 1 hour a week. Anything you can start to slowly chip away and delegate out, you'll start to get yourself ready for those next levels. But you don't have to have 5 of them. You have 1 for a couple hours a week. And most people start out there for quite some time. Like, I had a VA probably 4 hours a week for years before I had true support and team help. And you can get a lot done there. So.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people are even afraid of those numbers and they haven't done the math. We're talking $300 or so a month can get you a lot of support.
Yep. $300 a month. And those people can do many things. Like, they can check your emails, right? They can set up appointments. They can help with maybe your billing, customer service, like basically things that are just kind of like time suckers. They can help with many of those things for you. So you're not having to do all of it.
Yeah. I know a lot of people get so bogged down in the tech aspects of their business, and VAs are amazing for that too.
Yeah. And I would say, like, look at your whole day and like figure out what your genius zone is, right? So what you're really good at and what's the highest, if you were paid, if you like imagine yourself as an employee to your company, what would be your title? What would be your role? And that's going to be the stuff that makes you vibe, like wherever you're at in your genius. That's the work you're going to be working on. And then you make a list of the other stuff that you can do, obviously, because right now you're just one employee of the company, right? But you prioritize that list from what I could do to like, I can do it, but I'm not that great at it. It takes me 50 times as long. Make that list. So the second you're ready to hire that first help for a couple hours a week, your bottom 3 things is what you'll be delegating first. Mm-hmm. Do you follow? So you kind of know where you're at in terms of that, and realizing in the beginning you do it all anyways. But your goal, once you step into this empire mindset, your goal is how quickly can I get this off my plate? Mm-hmm. I say quickly loosely. It's not like a 5-month thing. I mean, it could be a little bit longer. It could be short, but that's your motivation, is when I get to here, I'll be able to bring in more help for this.
I love it. And I know with some of you guys listening, you might be a little intimidated by the word empire. And so I'd invite you to also consider the word movement.
Love that. Yeah.
So many of, at least my crowd that listens to this, and I know you drive with a similar crowd, is we are purpose-driven entrepreneurs. We want to make the world better with our products and services. So if you really wanted to show up and serve your target market, is it going to be served with a hobby, barely tiptoeing in or one toe in the circle like Casey was describing? Or can you serve your market best by diving all the way in, right? And saying, this is the movement that I care about. This is the movement that I'm going to stand by. And we're going to make things more efficient and effective so that we can serve more people.
Yep.
Right?
Yep. And look at, I love the movement over the empire majorly. So look at that. But imagine imagine you are having to go to work. Like, you're not having, but you're employed. Let's just pretend there. Mm-hmm. If you didn't go every day, your mind was like, I don't feel like going, you wouldn't have a job, right?
Yeah.
So if you don't show up to your movement at the minimum that you've committed to, think of it like you've got a contract. Think of it like you got a contract with this movement, and I need to show up 3 days a week for 5 hours a day, whatever your schedule looks like. And that's my commitment. I cannot go. If I'm sick, I need a doctor's note, right? Like, so in other words, if I'm not at the doctor, I'm showing up.
Yeah.
So treat it like it's like a true job, and you're working for the movement, because that is what you're working for. You're working for making things better. So you're showing up for that movement. So it's almost like you've now removed yourself out of the equation, because you have to show up for it.
And I love what you're saying. I wonder if some of you maybe even missed the actual hours Casey was just giving in the example, because it's so easy as we're hearing these conversations to be like, oh yeah, all in. Okay, 40 hours a week. Oh, all in. That means I've got to, be on my phone while I'm bouncing one of my kids on my knee. No, that's not at all what Casey's describing. So maybe lean in there, Casey.
Yeah.
But Casey really was just saying 3 days a week. That's really
absolutely. Absolutely. And because that's the thing, I'm more about sustainability and keeping your adrenals safe. So if you want to be like, okay, I'm going after this movement and 7 days a week, all day, I'm going to say absolutely not, right? Mm-hmm. You're going to figure out what is going to be best for your business and your lifestyle. So some of you guys can maybe show up 5 days a week, and you could show up, for your 8 hours, like a traditional full-time job. Other people, you may have more of a part-time schedule where it's 3 days a week, 5 hours a day. And maybe it's not 5 steady hours because you're dropping kids off and you're juggling lots of things. So it could be little 2-hour pockets here and there, right? But you have a schedule, from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. it's this. From 1 o'clock to 3 o'clock it's this. And from 4 to 6, whatever, you make up your hours. But come whatever, you're showing up, unless if you're sick. And you have to show up. And so then it gets into some of the work that I do is like, okay, how productive can you be in that time? Because I only have a 2-hour window, and I watch a lot of people lose quality 15-minute increments because they're like, oh, it's only 15 minutes. What can I get done? It's like, well, actually, there's 2 things on this list that can happen in 5 minutes. I'm going to knock them out. So I teach people how to really maximize their time in that process too. So, but yeah, you don't feel like you got to, in order for it to be a movement, you have to be there 100 hours a week or anything like that. If you can, you can, but it's still, your adrenals are not going to like that too much.
So true. Now, we've been talking about some of the logistic pieces, but I know one of your Jedi zones is also helping with that mindfulness and that mindset piece as well. And so with any of these transition pieces, I would love for you to speak on this, because you are so good at the in-between space where it's, okay, you're going after this thing and, oh, there's the waiting period, or, oh, you've got to hang on and see, right? Or you've got to keep showing up and hopefully it will work. What are some of the ideas and strategies you have to support getting through those times?
Yeah, absolutely. So here's the thing. You're always going to be waiting on something, right? So an opportunity to maybe get this contract, or an opportunity to maybe get a speaking gig, or the opportunity for a book deal, or these are bigger things, but like it could just be the opportunity of, am I going to get a contract that's going to pay my bills this month, right? The simplicity of it. Am I going to get it?
Yeah.
So anything that you would allow stress to come into your space. It could also be, oh my goodness, we're behind our deadline, and everybody just goes into frantic mode, right? Because that's common. We get behind, right?
Yeah.
So the fact is let's just take you're behind. You're behind. You can't change that in this present moment, right? So you've now brought stress in. So if you are talking to vendors or freelance people that are helping you, and you're like, we're behind, when is it going to get done? And when you're barking that stress, people can't hear you. Okay. So two things are happening. You're barking and people aren't hearing you. And then you're somewhat abusing what's going on in here, because the reality is the deadline being behind is not fire, flood, or blood. It's not life or death. Right. So it's almost like
That is the best analogy. Okay. Keep going.
Right? I mean, but we treat everything like that, and it triggers, and it fires up your adrenals, and potentially could pop you into fight or flight, which is such not a healthy process. Right. But our society allows us to get into that mode, even in a traffic jam. I mean, it's just a traffic jam, right? So it's really interesting to look at that. So basically what I'm working with people, I have a group program about this, and it's called the Mindful Hustle. And once you go through the program, it's a 6-week program, you become a mindful hustler. So it's going to be different for everyone, but in that, anything that you would let stress come in naturally, I teach you to recognize that, and from the process of whatever it is you're waiting for. So let's take that you're behind in a project. So you're behind, the deadline is in a week, right? It's that whole week. How do you want to show up for that week? Do you want to show up for that week like this, barking, completely stressed out, completely miserable? Because the reality is the week is going to go by, and you're either going to make the deadline or you're not, right? You're either going to be made it, or it's going to be a little late. Those are the two only outcomes that happen, right? Yeah. So how do you want to show up during that week while you're waiting? How do you want to show up for yourself, for your energy space, for the people around you, for your family, for your vendors that are working so hard for you? Because the reality is no one wants to be behind. No matter what role you're in, no one wants to be behind. So you have a choice on if you want to let that stress in, or do you want to save that stress for the real stuff? Yeah. And the more you can become a mindful hustler, and you protect this energy space in everything that you're doing, and you're not allowing these freak outs, when the stuff really goes down, it's no guarantee. You may completely freak out, but you're likely going to be just a pinch more grounded than others. And you'll become a person potentially, or people do lean on you when stuff really goes down, because you are a little bit more mindful, and you're just a bit more of a mindful hustler in that way. Yeah. So that's the work. It's a beautiful 6-week program. We look at all kinds it's a personal and professional development program, because I truly believe that you have to blend both your personal and your professional to become the ultimate mindful hustler. So we look at blocks, we look at self-love, we look at what the mindful hustle looks like to you, because it's going to be custom. It's going to look different for you, Quinn, versus me. Very different, but we really look at that and customize it so it works for you. The art of saying no, which sounds so simple, but in order to become a mindful hustler, you have to be able to deliver a no that's not offensive and that you have no guilt around. Because in order to mindfully hustle, you're going to have to tell people no. So we work a lot on that. Self-worth, just a lot of good stuff that brings it all together so that you can kind of stand a little taller in this process. And then the nice part is once you've learned these steps, you start to put them in play to anything that's going to come up, whether it be big or small. But anytime you're bringing stress in where you can recognize that it's not necessary stress, you bring it in and you put the tools in play and you're good to go. So yeah, I think it's going to open up this week, actually. It opens twice a year. So yeah.
Oh, good. Well, you'll send us the link then, and we can put that in the show notes, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Already.
For sure.
So yeah, we'll definitely be putting that in the show notes. And honestly, if anybody listening, if you're thinking, I don't have time for this and my life is too crazy for this, you're probably needing to check this out.
Check it out.
That is exactly that moment.
Yeah.
You would justify, I don't need support or I don't need additional skills. When in reality, that's what's going to get you to that next level. It's the level-headed approach. It's the mindful approach that's going to make your business grow much faster than this frantic, stressed out intensity.
The sustainability. And I like the fact that this program, like I said, does personal and professional, so you can use it in both of your lives. But it's sustainability so that you're training your mindset to be selective in what you allow to be stressful in a society that allows everything to be stressful, right? Like even waiting in a line at a grocery store can become stressful.
Yeah.
Why?
Right.
Can't find your phone. Where's my phone? Right? Like everything is stressful. So it's really, it's a really cool experience when you're able to just pick and choose and save the stress for the real stress.
It's so good. It's reminded me too of how much harder a hobby is to maintain than an actual empire or movement. Like I feel like when you finally switch that gear in your head and you're like, oh, man, 99% in was way harder than 100% in, because you were continually having to justify and to convince yourself and to make it okay, right? Instead of just like, actually, this is my passion project. So now I can be smart about it. How can I do this sustainably and efficiently and effectively so we can make the maximum impact while also me being able to show up in my life and in my relationships deeply and in a meaningful way.
Yeah.
The magic happens, right?
Absolutely. And I think it's also important to find a tribe of soul sisters that you can actually talk to. Like Quinn and I met at an event. We just happened to sit next to each other and became instant friends. And it's really important to find other entrepreneurs that you can vibe with and tribe with, because it can get kind of lonely. And like I was mentioning, just whether you're treating it as a hobby or a movement, right? Your mindset still will mess with you a little bit. It'll just you preparing for it, right? So having other friends that you can reach out to and talk to about it, just to make sure everybody's like kind of going in the same direction, is very, very helpful and important.
And to feel like it's normal, right? Too, like, oh,
yes,
like how you were clarifying in the beginning, fear at every one of these up level points in your business is always going to show up. Right? Like, relief. I don't have to take it personally or feel like something's wrong. I can just get smarter at working with it.
Yes. And you're going to be able to get so familiar with it that it's predictable. So sometimes, like when I know I'm getting ready to do something big, I'll laugh and say, okay, in my journal, I'll be like, okay, how quickly is my mind going to tell me not to do this? And so when it does it, I'm like, haha, I got you ahead of time. And then some days I'm like, oh, I'm not feeling good. Some days I can laugh at it and be like, not today, go away.
Oh my gosh, so powerful. And so I love in this, what you're really describing in the Mindful Hustle program and whatever you're teaching is arming yourself with skills so that when that voice shows up or when the stress comes up, you know how to handle it in a way that is totally in integrity with your heart and soul and is love, really. Love to yourself and love to the people around you and that are interacting with you. And if I could say, I definitely have said this on the show before, but I feel like that is the number one thing that we are lacking so often is we're lacking the actual skills to handle things, to handle our mindset or to handle our businesses and anything that's in our life right now. So I just can't recommend this piece and what you teach enough, because I know that, through acquiring those skills and working with you, it's dramatically transformed my life and business and allowed us to scale in ways that I'm like, what? That's like play money numbers. Is that really real that's like possible in the next quarter? That's insane, and not be intimidated by that because of the skills and the strategies that you've taught me with, not only with mindfully hustling, but also with how to actually improve and make business operations so much more effective and efficient with employees and with all of the other processes, and just how to show up as my best self in my business. So you're just the bomb with all of this. So thank you for sharing your genius today and bringing all this on the show. I have just a few little rapid fire questions for you if you're up for that.
Ooh, yeah, for sure.
All right. So it's just first answer that comes to your mind. Okay. So what is your joyful living with friends? Like what do you love to see or do that's just pure joy with friends?
Ooh, pure joy with friends. I really liked our train ride that we took to San Diego. That was really fun. But pure joy, usually people come visit me because I live on the beach, so it's kind of a big spot. So I love taking, because my spirit animal is a sand dollar. That bowl behind me is full of sand dollars. And I love taking people out on adventure on the beach, and I hope that they find a sand dollar or I find one to give to them. So that's like my complete jam. And I know I've taken you on a couple too. So that's pure joy, and like very low key, like pull a blanket out, like just chill out on the beach and just watch the ocean and really experience like that type of stuff. Yeah.
Oh, so good. So good. Okay. How about pure joy with family?
Pure joy with family. Card table, playing cards, having a couple of cocktails, just laughing and playing games.
So fun. So fun. How about pure joy with yourself? Solo time.
Pure joy with myself, quiet time. I am an introvert, even though it doesn't appear that way. I require a ton of recharge time. So for me, I like to sneak away on Sundays and take my naps. So wherever I'm at, I'll come back to the house and just get a little 10-minute power nap in, and just quiet time for me.
So good. The last one, pure joy with the divine.
Ooh, pure joy with the divine. Sound baths.
Ooh.
Sound baths, epic. Those float chambers, where you float in the Epsom salt chambers. There's a formal name for those.
Yeah.
Game changer.
I've been wanting to try that. Love that.
My meditation game isn't as strong as I'd like for it to be. So I do better with walking meditations. So I just kind of do what works best for me. I struggle more in the seated meditation. I can do it, but I get way more connected with divine when I'm doing my walking. So it's just, I guess I'm more of like a vegan meditator. I just walk around with it. Just trying to go for something, but it didn't come out right. So whatever. I'm modified.
I love it. Yeah. So good. And that's a lot of times when I know you find your sand dollars, and it's like so in tune with, oh, this is what you were feeling, and you found a sand dollar at that right moment confirming, and you have the coolest experiences. I love it.
I definitely communicate with the ocean. That might be a little woo-woo, but I ask it questions and find sand dollars. So it's and to be fair, sand dollars aren't that common in Santa Monica, so people don't have just like hundreds of them. So I don't know.
It's a thing. It's the real thing. It's so
real thing.
Oh my gosh. Well, it's been pure joy to have you on the show, Casey. I have just loved every minute, and we could probably honestly be having you back on regularly, I could see, because there's so much more we could talk about and so many other angles. But I just have loved the nuggets that you've given our listeners today, and I hope that everybody listening is leaving with greater hope and confidence and clarity about how to move forward in their business. Is there any final closing thoughts that you'd like to share? Or, I'm all tongue-tied. Any parting words of wisdom? Anything you wish you would have been able to share prior, but now is your moment?
No, I have a free gift if anybody would like it. I could offer that.
That sounds lovely. Yes.
Cool. Yeah. I have a free gift. It's called Rise Above Stress, and it's a 3-part video training that's free. And it covers how to kick stress out of your life once and for all. You will learn how to manage your energy space so that you're the boss or the company that people would want to work for. And also you're going to protect your energy space. So it's a great opportunity to just get used to kind of my style. But it's a 3-part video series training. You can get it on my website. Just go to CaseyVanZandt.com, and there's a free gift tab, and you can just put your name and email address in and rock out. So you can enjoy that. And then you can also find me on Instagram. My handle is CaseyVYoga. And just make a little comment or send me a direct message and say you listened in, and I'll follow you back. So I do a lot of stuff on the gram. I love the gram.
So much goodness there. Oh
Yeah.
my goodness. Well, any last like if anybody walked away from this conversation today, what's the one thing you'd hope that they would take away for moving forward?
Step in. Just step in. Step into the movement and learn to predict your mindset. Step in and predict your mindset, and then that's it, you know? Once you can look at it that way, even though it's not always going to be foolproof, when you can look at it that way, everything becomes a little easier.
I love it. Oh, so good. Thank you so much, Casey. And thank you to all of you who have been listening. We hope that this blesses and supports your life and your business. And we please know how much we are cheering you on and following your heart and soul paths and making this world better with that big heart and soul dream, and knowing that you can do it in a way that feels good and makes maximum impact. So thank you, Casey, for being such a lighthouse in showing that path and how to do that well. By all means, if you're feeling any connection at all to what Casey has shared, I 1000% endorse anything Casey offers and would highly recommend you guys to check her out and get connected. She just is a game changer. So thank you to everybody listening. Thank you for Casey being on, and so much love to all of you. We will talk to you guys again soon. Bye.